The restaurant's golden chandeliers glittered like fragments of a dream, but for Clara Bennett, the dream had long soured. At 32, once the rising star of a tech empire she had built from scratch, she now rolled quietly into the upscale Manhattan brasserie in a sleek titanium wheelchair. Her long auburn hair framed a face calm, determined, but beneath the calm lived a storm she never let anyone see. She had agreed to this blind date only because her assistant had insisted. "Clara, you deserve at least one evening that isn't about quarterly reports or medical checkups. Just try." So here she was, a linen tablecloth, sparkling glassware, a corner booth by the window where the city pulsed with light. Across the room, laughter bubbled from tables full of couples. Clara adjusted her blazer, fingers tracing the wheel rim to steady herself. She had prepared for polite conversation, maybe even awkward small talk. What she hadn't prepared for was cruelty. "Wait," a man's voice cut sharply as her date arrived, tall and smug in a tailored jacket. His eyes darted to the chair before anything else. Seriously? You're in a wheelchair?" The words hit like glass shattering. A nearby fork clinked to the floor. Conversations faltered, heads turned. Clara's lips stayed composed, but her knuckles whitened on the table's edge. She inhaled slowly, drawing every ounce of composure she had mastered in boardrooms where men twice her age doubted her. Her voice was calm, low. "I didn't think it was something I had to explain. I came here for conversation. If you wanted a fantasy, I'm not it." He barked out a cruel laugh. "Conversation? Please. I thought I matched with Clara Bennett, the genius CEO who sold her company for billions. Not some pity project." Now every eye in the restaurant was on her. Whispers darted like knives. Is that really her? The Clara Bennett? Someone raised a phone recording. Clara sat straighter, her tailored blazer immaculate, her jaw set like steel. She looked every inch the powerful executive they knew from headlines, except tonight, she was a woman wounded on display. Her fingers reached for her bag. She would leave, alone again. But then, from the entrance, another voice broke the silence. Low, steady. "I think that's enough." Every head turned. A man had just stepped inside, broad-shouldered in a flannel shirt rolled at the sleeves, worn jeans dusted from a long day. His dark hair was tousled, his hands rough with calluses, but his presence filled the space more than any tailored suit ever could. He walked forward unhurried, his gaze not on the heckler, but locked on Clara. When he reached her side, he rested one hand gently on the back of her chair. "Are you ready to go?" His voice was soft, almost private. For a heartbeat, Clara couldn't breathe. Was this another cruel setup? But his eyes, steady, kind, not pitying, told her otherwise. She gave a small nod. The man turned toward her date. She deserves better. No shouting, no threats, just quiet conviction. Then he guided Clara's chair toward the door. Not one person stopped them, not one dared. Outside, the night air was cool, carrying the faint scent of rain-soaked streets. Clara felt the knot in her chest loosen just slightly. She glanced up at him, the stranger who has stepped into her humiliation and quietly rewritten it. She didn't know his name yet, but for the first time in years, she felt the smallest flicker of something she thought she'd lost forever. Hope. The stranger's name, as Clara would soon learn, was Ethan Cole. 34, a mechanic from Brooklyn, the kind of man whose hands told more stories than his words ever could. He lived above the small garage he inherited from his uncle, fixing cars by day, fixing broken pieces of his own life by night. Ethan was no stranger to responsibility. His younger sister had struggled with addiction, and when she vanished from their lives 2 years ago, she left behind a little boy, Noah, only 6. Ethan never hesitated. He took Noah in, traded his nights out for bedtime stories, and taught himself to braid hair for school plays because Noah had begged to be the prince with golden curls. His world was simple, messy, real. Oil stains on the floor, mismatched mugs in the kitchen, laughter echoing through a too-small apartment. Yet there was warmth in that mess, a kind of home no money could manufacture. Clara's world couldn't have been more different. Raised in Connecticut, top of her class at Stanford, she'd built her company, Narova Technologies, from a tiny startup in a borrowed office to a global leader in medical software. At 30, she sold it for billions and took her seat among the titans of business. The headlines called her the unstoppable prodigy, the iron genius, but the headlines didn't mention the accident. A car crash on a rainy November night, the seatbelt snapping her spine. In one moment, the unstoppable became still. She had survived, but her legs had not. Clara had returned to boardrooms in her wheelchair, had stared down investors with the same unwavering gaze, had built an empire of influence that no one could ignore, but behind closed doors, she was weary. The pitying glances, the whispered, "Such a shame, she was so beautiful, so young," the quiet loneliness of penthouses that echoed with nothing but her own breath. She had tried to convince herself she needed nothing more, that success was enough, that independence was her armor. Yet deep down, the human ache remained, a hunger for connection, for someone who saw her, not just the chair, not just the money, not just the tragedy. That night outside the restaurant, when Ethan stood beside her, something shifted. He didn't hover or fuss. He didn't try to push her chair without asking. He simply walked next to her, step by steady step, as though it was the most natural thing in the world. They paused beneath a flickering street lamp, the city buzzing around them. Clara finally spoke, her voice careful. "You didn't have to do that." Ethan shrugged lightly, a half smile tugging at his lips. "I couldn't sit there and watch him tear you apart. That's not right." Clara studied him. The faint grease smudges on his collar, the tired lines around his eyes, the way he stood solid and unbothered by the curious stares of passers-by. "You don't even know me," she said quietly. "I know enough." And somehow those 3 words felt more grounding than all the accolades she'd ever received. In the days that followed, Clara tried to tuck the moment away as just a fleeting kindness from a stranger. But life, unpredictable as ever, had other plans. She ran into Ethan again, this time in the most ordinary of places, a grocery store near her apartment. Clara, dressed down in a sweatshirt and sneakers, sat scanning the fruit aisle when she heard a familiar voice. "Noah, put the cereal back. We're not buying marshmallows for dinner." She turned, surprised. Ethan stood there, a grocery basket in one hand, a boy with a mop of sandy hair clutching a box of neon-colored cereal in the other. Noah's eyes went wide when he noticed Clara. "Whoa!" he whispered, not out of judgment, but pure curiosity. "You're in a race car chair." Clara laughed despite herself. "Not quite, but it does go pretty fast." Ethan shot Noah a look, embarrassed. "Sorry, he says whatever's in his head." "It's fine," Clara said warmly. "Honesty's refreshing." Something about that moment, the unfiltered awe of a child, the gentle exasperation of a man trying to raise him, unraveled a thread in her. And when Ethan invited her, almost shyly, to join them for hot dogs at the corner stand after shopping, she found herself saying yes. For the first time in years, Clara ate on a sidewalk bench with mustard dripping from her bun, listening to a little boy tell jokes that made no sense, and a man whose laughter was as real as the grease on his hands. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't staged. It wasn't anything the world expected of Clara Bennett, billionaire CEO. And yet, it was the first evening in a long time where she didn't feel broken. She just felt human. The days after their unexpected grocery store meeting unfolded with a surprising ease. Clara had expected awkward silences, or at least the slow fade that usually followed chance encounters. But Ethan didn't let it fade. He texted, not with polished lines or rehearsed charm, but simple, straightforward words. Noah won't stop asking if you really can make the chair go fast. Want to prove him right at the park? Clara stared at the message for a long moment, a smile tugging at her lips despite herself. She'd been invited to gala dinners, business summits, charity balls, where people eyed her chair more than her words, but no one had ever invited her to prove her chair could go fast. So on a breezy Saturday afternoon, Clara found herself at Prospect Park. Ethan waved from a bench while Noah ran circles around him, a blur of energy in sneakers too big for his feet. Clara wheeled toward them, the sun catching the auburn strands of her hair. "There she is!" Noah exclaimed, sprinting over. "Okay, show me turbo mode." Clara laughed and spun her chair in a quick arc, the wheels humming smoothly over the pavement. Noah clapped like he'd just seen a superhero reveal. "That's awesome!" he shouted, his grin infectious. Ethan shook his head, chuckling. "You're gonna make him want one now." For the first time in months, Clara's laughter rang out unrestrained. It felt strange and natural all at once. They spent the afternoon walking, or rolling, through winding paths. Noah ran ahead to chase pigeons, while Ethan and Clara fell into an easy rhythm beside each other. He didn't ask intrusive questions about her chair or the accident. Instead, he asked about her favorite books, the music she liked, the food she couldn't live without. Questions that made her feel like a person, not a headline. At one point, Noah returned, holding out a small dandelion puff. "Make a wish," he said solemnly. Clara hesitated, then took it carefully. Her breath was shaky, but when she blew, the seeds scattered like tiny stars. Ethan's gaze lingered on her, soft and unspoken. Later, as they sat with paper cups of lemonade from a vendor, Noah dozed against Ethan's side. Clara studied the picture they made, this man with oil-stained hands and tired eyes holding a child with absolute care. It stirred something in her she hadn't dared to feel, the sense of belonging. "Must be a lot raising him on your own," Clara said gently. Ethan glanced down at Noah, then back at her. "It's everything. Hard? Yeah. But he's the best part of my day." His voice carried no bitterness, just a quiet conviction that made Clara's chest tighten. The following week, Clara found herself accepting Ethan's invitation again, this time to his garage. It was a world she had never stepped into. The smell of motor oil and metal, shelves stacked with tools, the steady clank of wrenches against steel. Noah buzzed around like a miniature foreman, handing Ethan bolts he didn't actually need. "Here," Ethan said, offering Clara a rag when a streak of grease landed on her sleeve. She raised a brow. "You know this blazer costs more than your entire tool set." He grinned. "Then it's an honor my grease got the chance." She laughed, shaking her head, but she didn't change her jacket. For the first time, the stain didn't feel like a blemish. It felt like proof she was there, really there, in a place that was messy and alive. As the evening wore on, Ethan set up a small portable grill outside the garage. Clara sat in the cool night air, watching him flip burgers while Noah set out mismatched plates. The food wasn't five-star cuisine, but the taste, the smoky char, the tang of ketchup, the crunch of pickles was more satisfying than any Michelin dinner she'd ever endured. Noah leaned across the table, ketchup smeared across his cheek. "Clara, did you ever race your chair down a hill?" "Not yet," she admitted. "Then we gotta try it," he declared, eyes shining. Ethan groaned. "Don't give her ideas." Clara's laughter bubbled out again, light and free. It wasn't one grand gesture that wove her closer to them. It was the small things, the way Ethan always asked before helping with her chair, the way Noah's little hand would slip into hers without hesitation, the way conversations flowed without the weight of pity. On the walk back to her car that night, Clara paused under the glow of a street lamp. She turned to Ethan. "You know, you ruined me for all the charity galas." "How's that?" Because now I know there's better company under a string of garage lights than under a chandelier." Ethan smiled, a quiet warmth in his eyes. "Then I'll take that as the highest compliment." For Clara, it was, because she realized something terrifying and exhilarating all at once. She was beginning to feel safe with them. Safe enough to laugh, safe enough to hope, safe enough to wonder what it would mean if she let this connection grow. Autumn drifted into New York with crisp air and leaves that crunched underfoot. Clara found herself meeting Ethan and Noah more often, sometimes for an impromptu dinner at the garage, sometimes for long, meandering strolls through the park. Each moment carved out a new kind of rhythm in her life, one she hadn't realized she craved. But with closeness came cracks, the tender places where old wounds lived. One evening, they sat together on Ethan's fire escape. Noah had already fallen asleep inside, curled up on the couch with a comic book sprawled across his chest. The city hummed below them, headlights snaking like fireflies. Ethan handed Clara a mug of tea, steam curling into the night. "You don't talk much about before," Ethan said softly. He wasn't prying. His voice carried no demand, just an open door. Clara stared into the mug. The reflection of the streetlight shimmered against the amber liquid. She took a breath. Before was noise, boardrooms, interviews, headlines. "I thought if I worked hard enough, maybe I could outrun the loneliness." Then the crash happened, and suddenly I wasn't running anymore. Her voice faltered. She gripped the mug tighter. "I woke up in a hospital bed, tubes everywhere, doctors telling me I'd never walk again. My father cried, not because he was scared for me, but because he thought no one would take me seriously in business anymore. He said, people will see weakness." Ethan's jaw clenched, his hand flexing around the railing. "That's not weakness." Ethan blinked, the sudden intensity in his voice catching her off guard. He turned toward her, eyes fierce but steady. "Surviving what you went through, getting up every day, facing a world that tries to define you by one thing, that's strength most people will never understand." Her chest ached. Tears pricked hot behind her eyes, but she forced a shaky smile. "You always know what to say." Ethan shook his head. "No, I just know what I see." For a long time, they sat in silence, the city's hum filling the spaces between them. And for the first time in years, Clara let herself cry. Not the controlled tears she allowed behind locked doors, but raw, trembling sobs that shook through her. Ethan didn't flinch. He didn't try to hush her. He just laid his hand gently over hers, grounding her. When she finally drew a ragged breath, she whispered, "I hate crying in front of people." Ethan's lips curved faintly. "Then maybe you just needed the right person to see." Days later, Clara found herself at the garage again. Noah insisted on showing her his new school project, a papier-mâché solar system that was, frankly, more glue than planets. "Clara's the sun," Noah announced proudly, "because she's the brightest." Her breath caught. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Ethan met her eyes across the table, something unspoken passing between them. Gratitude, wonder, fear. Later, after Noah had gone to bed, Clara lingered, flipping through an old sketchbook she spotted on a shelf. The pages were filled with pencil drawings, wheels, engines, scraps of unfinished designs. One page made her pause. A portrait of a little boy, chubby cheeks, wide eyes, wearing a superhero cape made from a towel. "That's Noah," Ethan said, coming up behind her. His voice carried both pride and ache. "You drew this?" she asked softly. He nodded. scratching the back of his neck. Back when he first came to live with me, I was trying to figure out how to give him something solid when everything else was falling apart. Clara looked at him, studying the wariness etched into his features. What about his mom? His shoulders dropped. He leaned against the workbench, staring at the floor. My sister, she's been in and out of rehab for years. Last time she left, she didn't come back. Noah asks sometimes. I tell him she loves him because she does, in her own way. But he deserves more than waiting on promises that don't get kept. The weight of his words sank deep into her. She reached out, placing her hand gently on his forearm. You stepped in. You gave him stability. That's more than most people would do. Ethan's eyes lifted, raw and searching. Sometimes I wonder if it's enough. Clara shook her head, her voice steady. It's not about enough. It's about being there. And you are. For a moment, their hands lingered, neither moving away. It was as if their wounds recognized each other. Hers carved by loss of independence, his by sacrifice and responsibility. And in that recognition, there was healing. The following weekend, Ethan took Clara and Noah to a small street fair. They wandered past food stalls, carnival games, the smell of popcorn and candied apples thick in the air. Noah tugged at Clara's sleeve, begging her to try the ring toss. I'll lose, you know. You can't lose if you try, Noah declared with childlike certainty. Ethan handed her a ring. He's not wrong. She tossed. The ring clattered, missed by inches. Noah whooped anyway, throwing his arms up like she had won. Clara's laughter came easier now, her cheeks warm from more than the autumn chill. As evening settled, they sat on a curb eating caramel apples, sticky and sweet. Clara glanced at Ethan, his profile lit by the string lights overhead. For once, she didn't feel like the CEO in the wheelchair. She didn't feel like a broken survivor. She felt like Clara, just Clara, sharing ordinary joy with two people who made her world less heavy. And maybe, just maybe, she was beginning to believe she deserved it. For weeks, Clara had lived in a fragile golden bubble. Dinners at the garage, strolls through the park, laughter that felt unforced. She knew it couldn't last forever. Life always demanded a price. It came one Tuesday evening, cloaked in shadows. Clara had been invited to a charity gala, one she couldn't politely refuse. She dreaded the spotlight, but she agreed, hoping Ethan might come as her guest. He hesitated, adjusting the cuff of his worn flannel. I'm not built for tuxedos and champagne, he murmured. You're built for me showing up and not feeling alone, Clara countered, her eyes soft but insistent. He finally relented. The night began well enough. Clara in an emerald gown, hair swept elegantly over her shoulder, Ethan awkward but handsome in a borrowed suit. But the whispers started as soon as they entered. Is that him? The mechanic? She could have anyone, and she chose that? Look at his hands, grease stains on his nails. Clara tried to ignore it, but she saw Ethan's jaw tighten with every sideways glance, every polite smile dripping with judgment. Things unraveled when her father, Richard Bennett, cornered them near the ballroom's marble staircase. His silver hair was perfectly combed, his tailored suit immaculate. His eyes, however, were cold steel. So this is the man, Richard said flatly, the one who thinks he belongs in your world. Ethan shifted, trying to remain respectful. Mr. Bennett, don't, Richard cut him off. You fix cars, you rent an apartment over a garage, and you think you can stand beside my daughter, who built an empire, who represents our name? His gaze flicked to Clara, sharp with disdain. This is beneath you. Clara's breath caught, anger and shame colliding. Dad, stop! But Richard pressed on, his voice rising enough to draw stares. "She's fought to overcome enough, and you would drag her into your mess? What happens when your bills catch up, when your rough world bleeds into hers? She deserves stability, not someone looking for a free ride." The words hung like poison. Clara's chest tightened. I saw Ethan's face harden, his fists clench at his sides. But worse, I saw the flicker of doubt in his eyes. He said nothing as Richard turned away, leaving silence in his wake. Clara reached for Ethan's hand. "Don't listen to him."
But Ethan gently pulled away. "He's not entirely wrong." Her heart lurched. "What?" Ethan's voice was quiet, steady, but there was a tremor beneath it. "Clara, look at us. You belong to a world of glass towers and billion-dollar deals. I belong to grease-stained floors and overdue rent. And Noah, he deserves a safe life, not one dragged into battles we can't win." Her throat closed. "So you're saying, what, this isn't real?" Ethan looked at her then, pain etched deep in his eyes. "It's real. That's why it's dangerous." He took a breath, forcing the words out like they cost him pieces of himself. "Maybe your father's right. Maybe walking away is the only way to protect you." Clara's chest burned. "Don't you dare make that decision for me." But he was already stepping back, already building walls where moments ago there had been warmth. "I care about you too much to let you get crushed because of me." And then he left. The days that followed were a blur of silence. Clara texted, called, left messages. Nothing. Noah hadn't been at school pickup the day she stopped by, and the garage was shuttered when she drove past. The absence was louder than any words he could have said. Her mind circled endlessly. Was it her father? Was it something she had done? The old voices returned, cruel and familiar. "You're too much. You're not enough. People will always leave." She wheeled through her penthouse at night, the city skyline glowing through floor-to-ceiling windows, and felt emptier than ever. She stared at her reflection, flawless makeup, perfect posture, but eyes hollow. On the other side of the city, Ethan sat alone in his dim garage, Noah asleep upstairs. His ribs still ached from where two men in suits had cornered him days earlier, sent, he realized, by Richard Bennett. Their message was clear: walk away from Clara or we'll make you regret it. He hadn't told her. He couldn't, so he had chosen the cruelest weapon he knew: silence. One night, Clara scrolled through her messages, thumb hovering over the same words she had typed and erased a dozen times. "Please, just tell me why." But no reply came. The storm finally broke one rain-slicked evening. Clara, desperate for answers, found herself rolling through the streets near Ethan's garage, rain soaking her hair, her gown from the gala long replaced by a damp cardigan. Her hands trembled as she pushed, exhaustion clinging to her bones. Headlights flashed. A car screeched around the corner, too fast, tires hissing against wet pavement. Clara's wheels caught in a crack. Panic surged. She tried to push forward, but her grip slipped on the slick rims. The horn blared, and then arms, strong and familiar, pulling her up in one swift motion. Rain exploded around them as the car whipped past, horn fading into the distance. Clara gasped, clinging to the soaked fabric of Ethan's jacket. "Clara!" he breathed, his voice raw with panic. His hair dripped into his eyes, his chest heaved. "God, I thought you left me." He closed his eyes, forehead pressed to hers, rain sliding between them. "I thought letting you go would protect you. I thought if I disappeared, your life would be safe from all of this. For me." Clara's tears mixed with the rain. "What I needed wasn't protection. What I needed was the truth. What I needed was you." His arms tightened, his voice cracking. "I'm so sorry." And under the pouring sky, pain and longing collided as their lips met in a kiss that was anything but gentle. It was raw, desperate, the kind of kiss that carried every unsaid word, every broken promise, every piece of love too strong to be buried.
The rain had barely stopped when Clara realized words alone would never heal the wound between them. Ethan had returned, yes, but his guilt clung like chains. Every time he looked at her, there was love, but also hesitation, as if he still believed he was unworthy. Clara decided she couldn't let their story end in shadows. 2 nights later, she found herself outside Ethan's garage. She had rehearsed what she wanted to say, but when the door opened and she saw him, hair damp from a late shower, grease still under his nails, her resolve trembled. "Ethan," she said, her voice firmer than she felt, "if you're going to walk away again, at least let me finish this first." He frowned, confused, as she pulled something from her bag, a small, leather-bound notebook. She opened it to a page filled with sketches, doodles she had drawn late at night when sleep wouldn't come. There he was, crouched under a streetlight, sleeves rolled up, fixing a stranger's stalled car. Another page showed him holding Noah's hand, their silhouettes backlit by string lights at the fair. "I draw when I don't know how to say things," Clara whispered, "and every time I picked up a pencil, it was you, not your world, not your flaws, you." Ethan's throat worked, but no words came. Clara pressed on. "You think you're not enough because you don't have a corner office or a trust fund. But Ethan, do you know what it means to me when you ask before touching my chair? When you hand me a rag instead of an apology? When you look at me and don't see what I lost, but what I still am? That's worth more than all the polished suits and hollow compliments in the world." Her voice shook. "Don't you see? You're the one who made me feel whole again, not because you fixed me, but because you never tried to." For a long beat, silence stretched. Then Ethan moved, slowly, carefully, taking the notebook from her trembling hands. He flipped through each page, his rough fingers tracing the lines as if they were sacred. When he looked back at her, his eyes glistened. "I've never had anyone see me like this, not even myself," she murmured. Clara reached for his hand, gripping it tight. "Then let me be the first. Let me prove that I choose you, not despite your world, but because of it." The next week, Ethan made his choice clear, not with promises, but with action. Clara was scheduled to give a keynote speech at a major tech conference, her first since the accident. The pressure was immense. Investors, reporters, and cameras all waited to dissect her every word. Clara told Ethan she'd be fine, that she was used to the weight of the spotlight.
But that morning, as she wheeled onto the stage, nerves buzzed sharper than usual. She saw the sea of faces, the flashing lights, and for a moment, her breath faltered. Then, from the side of the stage, she spotted him, Ethan, standing quietly in the wings, not drawing attention, not interfering, just there. His steady presence grounded her, as it always did. She spoke, her voice strong, her words carrying, and when she finished, the applause roared. But it wasn't the ovation that steadied her heart. It was the way Ethan looked at her, as if she had just conquered the impossible, though to him she had never been anything less. Afterward, backstage, she wheeled toward him, adrenaline still coursing. "You didn't have to come." "I did," he said simply, "because you shouldn't face the world alone." Days later, Ethan had his own moment of proof. Clara arrived at the garage to find him and Noah in the middle of a project, an old, rusted wheelchair frame
perched on a workbench. "What's this?" she asked, curious. Ethan wiped his brow, grinning sheepishly. Well, it's not pretty yet, but Noah thought we could build something for you. Something that doesn't just move fast, but feels like yours. Strong, sleek, tuned like a custom car." Clara's chest tightened. "You're building me a chair?" Ethan shrugged, suddenly shy. "I figured if I can rebuild an engine, I can at least try. You deserve something that says freedom, not limitation." Tears pricked her eyes, unexpected and fierce. She touched the cool metal frame, imagining the finished product. "Ethan, this is the most extraordinary thing anyone's ever done for me." He stepped closer, his voice rough. "I don't have much to give, Clara, but I can give you this. My hands, my time, my promise that I'll never walk away again." For the first time since the accident, Clara didn't feel like she was chasing a life she had lost. She felt like she was building a new one, together with a man whose love spoke loudest through what he did. And in that moment, under the warm hum of the garage lights, Clara believed him.
Spring came softly to the city. The gray of winter melted into tender greens, blossoms dusting sidewalks with pale pink confetti. Clara wheeled herself down a narrow garden path behind Ethan's garage, where lanterns swayed gently in the evening breeze. It wasn't a grand ballroom or a glittering estate. It was better. String lights zigzagged between trees, casting a golden glow over mismatched chairs borrowed from neighbors. Mason jars filled with daisies lined the tables. A simple speaker hummed soft jazz in the corner, and standing at the front, in a crisp white shirt that refused to lie flat, was Ethan, looking at her like she was the only person in the world. Clara's heart pounded as she moved closer. Noah stood proudly beside Ethan, a makeshift boutonniere pinned crookedly to his shirt. When he spotted her, his grin stretched ear to ear. "You look like a queen," he whispered loudly, earning a chuckle from the guests. Clara laughed, her cheeks warm. She wasn't a queen. She was just Clara. Nervous, trembling, but filled with a joy she hadn't known in years. The small ceremony unfolded simply. No paparazzi, no headlines, just friends, neighbors, and the quiet hum of love. When Ethan took her hands in his voice shook. "I don't have palaces to give you, but I promise you, you'll never face a storm alone again. You are my partner, my heart, my home." Tears blurred Clara's vision. "I spent so long believing I had to be indestructible, that if I wasn't perfect, no one would stay. But you showed me that being seen, truly seen, is stronger than any armor. I don't need to stand to walk into this life with you." The applause was soft but full, genuine. Noah cheered the loudest, bouncing on his toes as if he'd been waiting forever for this moment. Later, as the guests mingled over slices of homemade cake, Clara wheeled quietly to the edge of the garden. Ethan followed, slipping his hand gently into hers. Together, they moved down a narrow path that led to a quiet stretch of sand where the water lapped at the shore.
"Are you sure?" Clara asked, her voice trembling. Ethan crouched beside her, his eyes steady. "Always." With careful strength, he lifted her, holding her close as her bare feet touched the sand. The grains were cool, damp with the tide. Clara gasped, her breath catching as tears spilled freely. "I haven't felt this since—" Her voice broke. "You don't have to finish," Ethan whispered, pressing his forehead to hers. "Every step you take, I'll be here." They stood together, her weight leaning into him, his arms solid around her. Each small step she took was shaky, but it was hers, and his steady presence made it possible. When they finally stopped, the waves rolling gently before them, Clara turned, cheeks wet, eyes shining. "You caught me when I was falling, in every way that mattered." Ethan brushed a strand of hair from her face. "And I'll be here, every step after." The breeze curled around them, carrying the salt of the ocean and the soft promise of tomorrow. Under the vast, open sky, Clara no longer felt like the woman defined by loss or headlines. She felt like someone who had finally found home, not in places or power, but in the arms of a man who saw her, wholly, fiercely, and without condition. For the first time since that November night years ago, she felt at peace. And with Ethan's hand in hers, she believed with all her heart, this wasn't an ending, it was the beginning. Love heals, family is chosen, and no one is ever too broken to begin again.